Once the guests have arrived and been received, the primary guest gives a self-introduction and sets the tone for the occasion. He or she may also outline the reason behind holding the tea ceremony, while also alleviating any concerns that guests might have. This is an important part of the proceedings for allaying anxieties of guests who may be worried about manners and etiquette. Money is offered by the guests to cover the considerable costs and time involved for the host, but is to be done in a subtle and tactful manner. First-time guests may receive some brief pointers on the correct etiquette, as well as the flow of the ceremony, but overall, the guest of honour will endeavour to establish an ambiance of sincerity and calm. After self-introductions have been made and the mood and intention established, the navigator leads the guests into the adjoining tatami room. Participants in a tea ceremony hold a fan in both hands as a way of demarcating a boundary and to show respect to the person they are addressing. Kneeling in front of the tokonoma alcove provides an opportunity to appreciate a work of art or a scroll on the wall. The host may select a scroll or artwork that is aligned to the season or complementary to the occasion. This allows the host to use the tokonoma to provide a certain level of hospitality or to indirectly convey something important to the guests. An original form of yoga designed by the Sohenryu school, Wabi Yoga involves a series of stretches and breathing exercises to bring poise to body and mind, and above all, to prepare the guests should they wish to try kneeling with their feet tucked underneath throughout the ceremony. Guests may also learn the correct way of bowing and other elements that will help provide a more fulfilling experience. An original form of yoga designed by the Sohenryu school, Wabi Yoga involves a series of stretches and breathing exercises to bring poise to body and mind, and above all, to prepare the guests should they wish to try kneeling with their feet tucked underneath throughout the ceremony. Meanwhile, outside in the roji, water is once again scattered around the garden and alleyways. This is a way of showing guests that the premises have been newly purified and helps to heighten the sense of cleanliness and sincerity. The stepping stones are carefully wiped down to prevent the straw sandals from getting wet. Facing in the direction of the small tatami room where they will soon be received, guests take some deep breaths to instill poise and a sense of oneness. It is customary for guests to bring kaishi paper to a tea ceremony. Long ago, paper from China was abundant and had various uses. These included writing down notes, using the paper with flowers, or as a makeshift plate to put sweets on. In today's tea ceremony, guests learn how to use this paper for wiping down utensils after use, and how to fold it up correctly and tuck it into their kimono. Guests also learn how to use kuromoji, a small wooden fork for cutting and eating sweets. More water is scattered in anticipation of the guests' arrival outside. Guests put on a pair of straw sandals over their white tabi socks and make their way into the garden where they pause in front of a pine tree. Here, they contemplate the journey that they are about to embark on, filled with a sense of beauty, sincerity, and graciousness. Leaving the everyday behind, guests may fondly recall their ancestors while gazing at the scenery of the garden. Taking deep breaths, they affect a sense of humility and sincerity for participating in the tea ceremony. It is now time to slide open the wooden door and to enter the inner roji one by one. It is important to crouch down gracefully on the stone before entering. The last person to close the door deliberately makes a sound to inform the tea master that the guests are approaching. Rather than announcing your entry verbally, this is a Zen form of non-verbal communication. Here, guests are afforded a different view of the garden, and while sitting on the bench they may take some deep breaths and exchange some observations on the garden before making their way into the chashitsu, or tea room. The sound of the gong signals to the guests that the host is ready to receive them. At this point, it is the correct etiquette to crouch down together as a display of humility and to prepare to be the recipient of the host's hospitality. Now that guests are in the right state of mind and have made the transition from the everyday to the extraordinary, they pass under the Baikenmon, or plum viewing gate, and in doing so, enter the inner garden. As with entering the main sanctuary of a shrine, before entering a tea house, each guest must crouch down at the tsukubai to purify the hands and mouth. This also functions to sharpen the senses and to display a sense of humility and sincerity. While the hosts have spent much of the day scattering water and immersing the utensils, cleansing at the tsukubai is the only ceremonial purification act that guests are expected to perform. Draw a ladle of water and divide it into 3 to cleanse your right hand, left hand, followed by the mouth. Once the hands and mouth have been purified, the final act is to hold the ladle vertically so that water cascades down, cleansing the ladle itself. When entering the tea house, each guest takes care to position their straw sandals neatly outside. The sound of the door closing by the last guest signals to the host that everyone has entered. Inside the tea house is a place of freedom and equality where everybody is on the same level. Guests may be from various backgrounds and possess different titles, yet by going through this small door, they relinquish these earthly hierarchies and adopt a spirit of equality. Kneeling before the tokonoma, guests may use the hanging scrolls for contemplating the teachings of Zen. Similarly, the implements provide a conduit for dialogue with ancestors. The host prepares each bowl of tea in front of the guests and places it onto the tatami mat in front of them, serving the primary guest first. Japanese sweets are often served as a contrast to the bitterness of matcha. While enjoying the tea and sweets, the primary guest may inquire about where the utensils are from, or compliment the host on the flavour of the tea or the sweets. In keeping with the ideal of purification, the white folded paper is used to clean the rim of the teacup or other utensils. Guests take a moment to observe and appreciate the precious utensils selected by the host for today's tea ceremony. Meanwhile, the scattering of water outside signifies that it is soon time to depart the tea house. Having partaken of the delicious matcha, the guests may now remark on the beauty of the utensils. Some are rare works of art that are irreplaceable. Guests sit down again with the navigator and share their thoughts and feelings and what they have learnt today. With the guests having departed, it is time to divide up the various tasks for tidying up the mizuya and roji. To avoid tarnishing the tatami mats, a wet cloth is placed on the floor, and then the charcoal embers are carefully transferred one by one to a container. This contains some water to extinguish any charcoal that is still smouldering. The underside of the iron kettle has been sullied by the charcoal fire, so water from the kettle is used to rinse off the base. As they transition back to the everyday, guests share some thoughts, observations and lessons from today. Upon parting, they bid farewell and look forward to the next occasion. The next day, the charcoal used in yesterday's tea ceremony is removed and transferred into a bowl for washing. The partly burned charcoal is washed and will be reused for other events and practices. The water used for washing the charcoal is rich in potassium and is returned to nature in the form of fertilizer for plants and vegetables.